Hello, friends. Welcome back to Custom Stories. I'm glad you're here for this journey today. To be honest, I knew the name Genghis Khan, like most people do. But when I decided to tell his story, I realized I had to go much deeper into history. And today, I want to tell you the story of how a boy from the Mongolian steppes grew up to conquer half the world. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel because I will share many more incredible stories from history and from myself as well. Temujin's story didn't begin in a palace, or even in a city. In fact, it started in one of the harshest places on earth, the vast, wild Mongolian steppes. Imagine a place where winters can freeze a man to death, and summers burn the earth dry. The land is open and empty, and life here was about survival. Temujin didn't enter this world as a ruler. He entered it as a boy trying to survive. Temujin's real name wasn't Genghis Khan at first. He was born to a family of nomads. The Mongols were people who moved with their herds of animals, following the seasons to find food and water. Life wasn't easy for them. They didn't have homes like the ones we think of today. Instead, their homes were tents, and they carried everything they needed with them as they traveled across the land. Temujin's father, Yesugei, was the leader of a small Mongol tribe. But even though Yesugei was a leader, his tribe wasn't rich or powerful. He had to fight to protect his people from other tribes. Life was tough, and every day was a struggle. As a boy, Temujin learned to hunt, ride horses, and survive in the wild. He grew up in the harsh reality of the steppes, learning the ways of the nomads and how to live off the land. But even though his father was a leader, young Temujin had to face the dangers of the land on his own. Temujin's childhood was filled with hardship, but it was also marked by one of the most dramatic moments of his early life, the betrayal and death of his father. One day, Temujin's father was invited to share a meal with a rival tribe. It was a trap. They poisoned him. This act of treachery completely changed the course of Temujin's life. His father's death wasn't just a loss for the family. It meant the fall of their tribe. Yesugei had been the leader, the protector, and now his family was left vulnerable. After his father died, something even worse happened. His own tribe abandoned the family. They were abandoned by the very people who were supposed to protect them. Now, Temujin's mother, Hoalun, was left alone to take care of her children. She had to rely on her strength and wisdom to help them survive. They were outcasts, forced to live on the edge of society. Without the protection of a tribe, they had to fend for themselves. This was the most difficult time in Temujin's early life. The family was reduced to extreme poverty, and their survival was uncertain. They had no choice but to gather whatever they could to eat, roots, herbs, and even fish from the rivers. They were literally starving. This wasn't a life of comfort or luxury. It was a life of constant struggle, of fighting for survival every day. It was in these harsh conditions, as his family struggled to survive, that Temujin's character began to take shape. The betrayal of his family, the loss of their status, and the fight for survival didn't break him, it made him stronger. From this moment, he would never be the same boy again. This struggle would forge the will that would one day turn him into a conqueror. One of the most intense and defining moments of Temujin's early life came when he had to confront his own brother. This was not just a family dispute. It was a life-or-death struggle that would show the kind of man Temujin was becoming. At the time, Temujin was still just a boy, around 10 to 14 years old. His older half-brother, Bektar, had become a source of conflict within the family. The brothers were part of a larger group of young boys who had been living with Temujin and his family after they were exiled from their tribe. Temujin's family was struggling, and their food supply was meager, which created tension among them. One day, after a disagreement over food and the harsh conditions they were living under, Temujin and Bektar had a serious argument. Bektar was older and often acted like he had authority over the others. The argument grew louder. Anger turned into violence, and in that moment, Temujin, his own brother. This was the first time Temujin took a life, and he was still just a boy, but it was a turning point in his life. The brutality of the moment showed how harsh the environment was and how survival could turn even a child into someone capable of violence. In that moment, Temujin learned a painful but crucial lesson. The world he lived in demanded strength and decisiveness. Personal relationships and family ties could be torn apart in the blink of an eye, and survival sometimes required sacrifices, sometimes even the loss of family. This wasn't just about a violent act, it was a signal that Temujin wasn't just surviving anymore, he was learning to take control. He realized that in order to rise above the hardships of his life, he had to be ruthless when necessary. It wasn't just about physical strength, it was about understanding that power, authority, and the will to take what you needed were sometimes more important than anything else. Just when things seemed to improve, Temujin's life took another brutal turn. This part of his story feels like something out of a movie. A young boy, once the victim of betrayal and hardship, now finds himself trapped in enemy hands. After the death of his father and the exile of his family, Temujin was determined to rebuild and regain what was lost. He began gathering followers, growing his strength, and making plans for the future. But his enemies had not forgotten him, and they captured Temujin and his small group of supporters. They were taken prisoner by the Tai-Chiud tribe, a rival Mongol group, and placed under strict guard. Temujin was treated brutally. They locked a heavy wooden collar around his neck, a symbol of slavery. It was a degrading and painful experience, but even in the most humiliating conditions, Temujin's spirit remained unbroken. As he sat in captivity, he began to study his surroundings, learning about the weaknesses of his captors and waiting for the right moment to escape. Despite the hopelessness of his situation, he was already thinking about how to regain his freedom. Then one night, the opportunity came, and Temujin ran, escaping with the help of another prisoner. This wasn't just a physical escape, it was an act of defiance. Temujin had made it clear to himself and to anyone who was watching that he would never be anyone's prisoner. His escape marked a turning point. He refused to be controlled by anyone or anything. Temujin's escape showed his unyielding desire for freedom and independence. Even when trapped and at his lowest, he demonstrated that he would fight to the end for his liberty. This moment wasn't just about breaking free from captivity. It was about refusing to let anyone, no matter how powerful, hold him down. One of the most personal and human parts of Temujin's story came with his marriage to Borte, a woman who would play a significant role in his life. But in Temujin's life, love and war were never far apart. Temujin married Borte when they were both still very young. They were promised to each other as children, and their bond was formed early in life. For Temujin, Borte was not just a wife, she was a partner in his journey, someone who shared his struggles and hopes. Their love would become one of the driving forces behind many of his decisions. However, their love story took a dark turn when, one day, a rival tribe attacked and kidnapped Borte, the Merkits. This was a deeply personal attack on Temujin, one that drove him into action. He could not allow such an insult to go unanswered. Temujin, now older and with some followers, gathered an army and set out to rescue Borte. This was his first real campaign as a leader, and it was a turning point for him. It wasn't just about rescuing his wife, it was about proving to himself and to his followers that he was a force to be reckoned with. He was not just a boy from a broken family anymore. He was now a leader capable of taking action and leading people to victory. In this moment, Temujin began to step into his role as a leader. It wasn't just about the love for Borte or revenge against the Merkit tribe. It was about proving that he could lead, that he had the strength and strategy to unite people and fight for what mattered to him. This was the beginning of Temujin's journey as a commander, and it would set the stage for the empire he would soon build. Temujin didn't rise to power quickly, and he certainly didn't rise easily. It was a slow and steady journey built on alliances, betrayals, and hard-won victories. As he began to unite the Mongol tribes, he realized that Temujin believed something radical for his time. Power should belong to the most capable man, not the one with the best bloodline. It was about skill, merit, and loyalty. At that time, the Mongol steppes were made up of many different tribes, each led by their own chieftains. These tribes were often in conflict with one another, which made it difficult for any single leader to gain true power. Temujin understood that in order to build a lasting empire, he needed to break away from the old traditions that placed power in the hands of the noble bloodlines. Instead of choosing leaders based on family ties or ancestry, Temujin selected his followers based on their abilities and loyalty. This was a revolutionary concept at the time. The idea that leadership should be earned, not inherited, attracted many capable warriors and leaders who were loyal to Temujin not because of his noble heritage, but because of his strength, vision, and leadership. His leadership wasn't just about military victories. It was about creating a new order, one where loyalty and merit were the deciding factors. He understood that in order to achieve greatness, he needed more than just soldiers. He needed a united and loyal people. Temujin's genius lay in his ability to inspire and unite people from different tribes and to build a society where merit and loyalty were valued above all else. Temujin's rise to power marked the beginning of his journey as a visionary leader. By breaking the old system and focusing on talent and loyalty, he started to unite the Mongol tribes, creating the foundation for the mighty empire he would soon build. In 1206, after years of struggle, battles, and uniting the Mongol tribes, Temujin achieved his ultimate goal. He was given a new name, Genghis Khan, a title that meant the ruler of all. This was not just a title. This moment marked the transformation of Temujin from a boy born in hardship to a man who would reshape the world. For years, Temujin had fought not only against enemies, but against the deep divisions within his own people. The Mongol tribes were not a united force. They were fragmented, often at war with each other, and each tribe was loyal only to their own chieftain. Temujin's vision, however, was different. He understood that to create a lasting empire, the Mongols had to stand together as one. It was this unification of the tribes under a single banner that would mark the beginning of an empire that stretched across continents. In 1206, Temujin gathered the leaders of the Mongol tribes at a grand council known as a Kurultai. It was at this assembly, with hundreds of tribal leaders present, that Temujin was given the title of Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. The title itself was significant. It wasn't just a ruler of a tribe or a small group of people. It signified his authority over all the Mongols. This was Temujin's moment to declare his vision for the future of the Mongols, a future where power wasn't determined by noble birth, but by merit, loyalty, and ability. The title of Genghis Khan marked the end of the old ways, the old systems of leadership based on family ties and inheritance. Instead, Temujin's rise to power demonstrated that a leader should be chosen for his strength, his leadership, and his ability to unite people. This new order brought with it a profound shift in the Mongol world. Now there was a single ruler who would lead the tribes not as separate groups, but as a unified force, with a shared purpose. This was not just about Temujin taking a title. It was about him taking control of the Mongol future. He wasn't just a tribal chief anymore. He was the leader of all Mongols, responsible for their unity and future conquest. His journey from a boy born in a small broken tribe to the Genghis Khan, the ruler of a vast empire, was complete. This was the beginning of an era of unprecedented change. Under Temujin's rule, the Mongol Empire would grow to become the largest contiguous empire the world had ever seen. And it all began with the unification of the Mongol tribes under one leader, one vision. Temujin's title as Genghis Khan symbolized his ability to do what no one thought was possible: unite warring tribes and transform them into a mighty empire. It was not just the end of his rise to power, but the beginning of the Mongol conquests, which would forever change the course of history. With the title of Genghis Khan came not only the responsibility of ruling the Mongols, but also the ambition to conquer the world. What followed was a series of military campaigns that would establish the Mongol Empire as the largest contiguous empire the world had ever seen. Temujin's first target was the Western Xia dynasty in China. His strategic genius was evident from the very beginning. He used a combination of fast-moving cavalry, psychological warfare, and advanced tactics to crush the Western Xia forces. His army was smaller, but it moved faster than anything the world had ever seen, was unmatched in speed and coordination. By 1209, the Western Xia dynasty had been forced to submit, and Temujin gained the first of many conquests. But it wasn't just China that caught his attention. Temujin knew that to build an empire, he needed to control the vast trade routes that connected the East to the West. This led him to the Jin dynasty, another powerful Chinese state to the northeast. In a series of brutal campaigns, Temujin again used his military brilliance to break through their defenses. He employed siege tactics, captured key cities, and even turned the Jin's own strategies against them. By 1215, the Jin capital, Chengdu, modern Beijing, fell to the Mongols. The Jin dynasty was left crippled, unable to defend itself against the unstoppable Mongol army. But Genghis Khan's ambitions didn't stop at China. his empire began to expand westward toward Central Asia and the Khwarezmian Empire. The Khwarezmians, rulers of a large region covering parts of modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, made a grave mistake when they killed Temujin's trade envoy. This act of disrespect led to one of the most brutal military campaigns in history. Temujin responded by sending his forces to destroy entire cities, using terror as a weapon to break the Khwarezmians' spirit. In Central Asia, Genghis Khan's army faced strong resistance, but once again, his tactics proved to be superior. Mongol forces captured the major cities of Bukhara, Samarkand, and Merv, cities that were known for their wealth and cultural importance. Rather than simply looting these cities, Genghis Khan took a strategic approach. He used these cities as bases for his future conquests, taking the wealth and knowledge they offered to strengthen his growing empire. One of the key aspects of Genghis Khan's military success was his use of intelligence and spies. He made sure to gather as much information as possible before striking, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of his enemies. His use of psychological warfare, creating fear among his enemies, was also revolutionary. Cities and kingdoms that heard of the Mongols' brutal tactics often surrendered without a fight, fearing what would happen if they resisted. By the time of Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean in the east to the Caspian Sea in the west. His conquests had reshaped the political landscape of Asia and Europe, creating an empire of unparalleled size. The Mongol army had proven to be unstoppable, and Genghis Khan's military strategies were studied for centuries to come. Genghis Khan's success wasn't just about brute force. It was his ability to combine strategy, speed, and psychological warfare to crush his enemies. His military genius and relentless drive for expansion turned the Mongols into a global power. This period of conquest marked the birth of the largest land empire in history and the spread of Mongol influence across vast regions. Even today, historians still argue about Genghis Khan. While his conquests brought about destruction and fear, they also laid the foundation for profound changes in the world. His empire not only reshaped the political map of Asia and Europe, but also had a lasting impact on trade, culture, and communication across continents. The Mongol Empire's vast size allowed for the first truly global trade network. Under Genghis Khan, the Silk Road, which had once been fragmented and dangerous, was revitalized. The Mongols ensured the safety of merchants traveling between east and west, and this led to an explosion of trade and the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. Silk, spices, and precious metals flowed freely between China, the Middle East, and Europe. This trade also brought new ideas in science, technology, and culture, enriching both the East and the West. The Mongols also played a key role in the spread of knowledge. As the Mongol Empire expanded, it connected different civilizations, creating a cultural melting pot. The Mongols themselves were open to learning from the peoples they conquered, and they helped to preserve and spread many ancient texts and scientific ideas. For example, they made use of the knowledge from the Chinese, Persians, and Arabs, and even helped to transmit this knowledge to the West. One of the most significant impacts of Genghis Khan's reign was the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace. This period of relative stability, which lasted throughout much of the empire, allowed for the safe passage of travelers, merchants, and diplomats across vast distances. Under the Mongols, the fear of bandits and warlords that had once plagued the Silk Road began to subside. This period of peace enabled the exchange of not just goods, but also ideas, ultimately contributing to the Renaissance in Europe, centuries after Genghis Khan's death. Perhaps one of the most interesting facts about Genghis Khan's legacy is that it is believed that 1 in every 200 men alive today may be a descendant of Genghis Khan. Genetic studies have shown that his direct descendants spread far and wide, a testament to the vastness of his empire and the legacy of his family. Despite his brutal conquests and reputation as a fearsome conqueror, Genghis Khan's empire had a lasting positive effect on the world. He promoted religious tolerance, established trade routes that connected the world, and helped to spread knowledge across continents. Genghis Khan's legacy isn't just about the empire he built. It's about the lasting impact he had on the world's development. He changed the course of history by creating an empire that promoted trade, knowledge, and cultural exchange, connecting distant civilizations and laying the groundwork for a globalized world.